Hello Internet, I'm Jackie Fox, I'm back, and I would like to welcome you guys back to the channel and to a longer and more put together video now that I actually have my editing gear again. So, let's talk about Bradley. As much as I've tried to avoid him, he is absolutely a unit that I just find irresistible. I've tried making the excuse that I don't like fascism and he's a Führer, that I don't like the monarchy and his first name is King, that I don't like villains and he is a bad boy on a really almost unparalleled level. Okay, Father was worse, but this guy just as a unit has so much flavor, and he's also an intersection of two types of units that I really enjoy in this game, and both of those things intersect. So one of the types of units, and I almost, like, way back in the day when I first started playing, I almost did a video about how much I appreciated the treatment of Titus, because he was just so flavorful for being like a physically based time mage. That was kind of his gist in the story anyways. So him being kind of a CT manipulation, haste manipulation kind of physical time mage in a way that, I mean, even modern time mages sometimes have hard times competing with some of the things that Titus can do, right? Even though that's not his niche and he's not the most powerful unit anymore, I would say that his haste compares favorably with any other AoE haste move I can think of, with the exception of maybe like Stars of Swiftness. So Bradley also has a lot of CT manipulation, which Titus had a little bit of too, but Bradley is also very much kind of a Strider-esque tank buster, which I fucking love as well, and we're gonna see him getting ridiculous. But unlike a lot of those units, the thing that makes Bradley special, other than everything that makes Bradley special, is that he's a DPS. Most tank busters aren't really DPSs in terms of like their stat profiles. They just have really consistent damage. Their damage is high on everybody. It's relatively high on tanks, but they're not necessarily hitting super hard. This guy's going to hit super hard and penetrate all defenses. It's going to be the real package, and there's a bunch of other things that add to it. So let's get into it. The sword's one of these pieces. This has a lot of freaking passives for him. I'm not sure how much you want to get this for other people. The attack up 25% is the strongest that I can think of in the game. That is 5% more than the Trust Stone passive that you could have equipped. So pretty strong actually as a passive, just a general unconditional passive to have on this. But I'm really looking at this for Bradley, and I'm really thinking that maybe like the honestly, probably the critical build is my favorite. You get decent accuracy, you get good crit rate, and let's face it, none of these have particularly high attack. 128 ain't bad compared to the aim, at least. Because 160 is not necessarily something to write home about. You might even put a lot of attack on his TMR and have your TMR as his main source of attack power on his equipment. The conditional effects for Bradley: slash attack up 15, great, always good to have that. Slash attack resistance penetration, good old Slark, 20. And we're going to see that Bradley can get 40 Slark from one of his best passives. Definitively his best passive. And then another 40 Slark from his LB. So after LB, with this sword equipped, he has 100% Slark. Slash attack resistance. Oh no, that's SARP. Well, yeah, I mean, okay, it could be a lowercase l. Acronyms can work like that. Slarp. He can get up to 100% Slarp, so slash attack resistance need not apply, at least in the first fight in guild battle. And then finally, and this is pretty flavorful, and apparently I think this is repeatable, although practically speaking, how repeatable? You're gonna need a healer or some drain zone or a lot of luck to really get this to land multiple times, but you do get about a fifth of a turn when your HP goes below 20 for self. Not the first time, but any time. So if you can heal yourself back up and push yourself back down without dying, then you could trigger this multiple times in a fight. And this is just a really fun way to stack in with all the other ways that he manipulates his own CT, which is
First things first, let's take out the biggest threat. Fucking courage. God, I feel like I'm fighting sorrow. Dude, that'd be a good fight.
Oh my gracious. God bless. Ooh. Good grief. I was like, no, there's no way he can do this from this space while picking up this crystal. And then I saw how big the AoE was, and I was just like, oh my god. That's absurd. Again, really flavorful for like the character that he was in FMA, where he's this kind of like, I don't want to say omniscient, but like you get the vibe that he can basically see a few seconds into the future in terms of what people are going to do, that he can kind of read people like that, and that he has the reflexes to back it up and move first. So, you know, his kit really gets that idea across pretty well. But let's talk about the master ability first. We've got missile resistance, AoE resistance, and HP. Really good combination for him, I think. And then reaction block rate 30. This is a pretty good one, I think, for future-proofing him. And we're going to see some nutty reaction stuff with him. So this is good for mirror matches and for matches against other units that have fairly ridiculous counters themselves. And then the upgrade skill is going to be Calculated Rend, and good lord is that an amazing skill. So let's actually look at his stats a bit. Don't always do this, but let's take a look at the resistances. Okay, so these are base. This is without the master ability. So 10% slash attack resistance, 10% piercing resistance, negative 10% to strike, 20% to missile, so you're getting that additional 10% missile, so it's going to be a base 30% resistance to missile, and then 10% resistance to magic, which is a little bit rare on... It's paralysis and slow resistance, which is pretty flavorful. He's well, not literally unstoppable, but you can't paralyze him or slow him at the very least. Alright, so let's look at these passives. The first one that you got, that you run this. You run Führer's Wrath. Just take it in, because it really does everything for him offensively. It is overtuned, overbalanced for offense. You have all of the applicable penetrations, you have AP consumption fixing, and you have raw attack up. That's nuts. Operative intuition feels kind of niche. It could help him to get the hate down, maybe in combination with another move in here. Potentially in a situation where you don't have a tank on the team. I think you would probably run this more for the move up one, and that is going to be very situational. That being said, move up one can be super important in the situations in which it is actually important, and I think move up one might also be a way of solving blink of an eye issues. in that that's one of those moves that he is very likely going to double cast in fight 1 in guild battle, maybe run out of buffs, not be able to use it in the second fight, and then have kind of a different buff order. There's all sorts of problems with that, but sometimes one more move is going to be able to fix those problems, so that's worth considering. I think his second best buff is definitely going to be Swift and True. 12% agility, 25% accuracy, both really good. Worth considering, though, is going to be Trick Lancer's lore. I think this is third best, so this is probably fourth, and then we got fifth and sixth. Just don't. Critical rate, I think, is the part that impresses me the most here, since he does have another source of defense penetration in his kit. I don't think that is usable multiple times. I don't think the defense penetration here is super necessary, but it is helpful for him. But the critical rate up is pretty cool for him, because I really like running him with Thornlet, because I just feel like adding the ability to land agility down on critical hits for him just fits his flavor. And we're going to see so much more of the fact that really, and I think that this is the thing that makes Bradley so powerful, and the thing that I would most like to play with him, most like to maximize for him, is basically he is such a tempo unit in terms of speed. He increases his own CT, he increases his own agility, and there are ways in which he attempts to decrease the other team's agility and not other team's CT. But you have other units that can do that. I'm really wanting to test him with Valentine's Ildira, see how her LB can work with him as well. I mean, good grief. Like, I just think leaning into that is a really interesting and also really flavorful way to go with him. And I think that the Thornlet is just a really amazing piece of that puzzle. So getting an extra 25 crit rate up to help ensure that every one of your hits is landing agility down, I think that's why this is my third favorite passive for him. And there's some serious competition. So the Ultimate Eye might be the best one here, because who doesn't like reflex, right? It has theoretically an infinite range. Anything that can hit you can be reflexed. I mean, I guess other than Drain Force. This also doesn't work on Drain Force. But 30% chance to proc, and the fact that I think he can do something even more impressive as a counter, maybe this isn't the one you run. This is first or second, maybe tied for first. I think the other counter for him that is tied with that is Predictive Counter. And this fits into his flavor, right? So imagine this. This guy is chaining even when he isn't taking turns. We've got Predictive Counter here, which is a slash attack, not much damage, but has a 30% chance to proc and has decent range. And then look down at Blink of an Eye, you get a new counter skill, Preemptivity. So we're going to talk about that buff a bit more later, but let's talk about the counter now, because this is another slash move, slightly higher range, so Preemptivity can hit things that you have to be a little bit closer in range to be able to chain these two preemptive strikes. But it does have an 80% chance to proc. That is awesome, but it's also in line with a lot of the additive counters that we're seeing. So it's not like too super out of the ordinary. 100%, 121% mod, so small damage on both of these. But when they get close enough in range that you can hit them with both, and when the stars align to get that 30% chance and the 80% chance to go off at once, you have just started a slash chain without utilizing his turn. You know what I mean? He's chaining even when he's not moving. It's ridiculous. So I would make a strong argument for this being another good counter, because what's better than stopping damage from coming in? Stopping damage from coming in by KOing their unit off of your turn. You know what, I'm actually noticing something interesting here that's making me like Predictive Counter more, is that it is counter all damage, much like the Ultimate Eye, which makes these both excellent. But I also noticed that Counter Trick, in addition to Preemptivity, are only physical. So this means that Counter Trick can still work with Preemptivity, but that strictly, the preemptive counter is definitely the better counter, even if you don't factor in a lot of the things that I said, just because it has an equal chance to proc a better range and a chance to counter against magic as well. Although it is worth noting that against magical damage, preemptivity will not counter, so you can't chain versus that, but you can still get your predictive counter off. And against magic, that actually makes the case for the ultimate eye a lot better. That's what. Theoretically, counter trick is fine here. It does give him the ability to get around slash attack resistance, but I don't think that that's super relevant for him. I guess it could be, but eh. So that's definitely a hard second, if not third. Quick Lunge is a piercing move in his main kit. It's basically Shifting Strike, but piercing. I really like this skill as a gap closer. I really like this skill as giving him a main job source of piercing. Another reason that we're not going to need other sources of piercing necessarily. He'll use it when he needs it. He doesn't use it a lot, though. He uses it, also, he has some of the same conditions that I think that Perrine does for using this. Upsurge, very similar ability. This is piercing upsurge, essentially. So he will actually use this fairly often as an AP conscious finisher, which is awesome because there's nothing better than knocking out a unit and then getting another turn off the back of that, because this is giving him a fifth of a turn afterwards, but he's not going to use it a ton. Poise is a big buff for him. You want to be making sure that this goes off no matter what. This is going to give him courage. This is going to give him 10 AP, and this is going to give him 20% increased physical damage while he has courage up. So as long as he doesn't have that courage proc, he can have that additional physical attack up for quite a while. And this has 2 casts as well, so 2 cast courage move. It's very similar in a lot of ways to Astrius's courage, and I think that makes him pretty strong because of it. He's not necessarily a tanky, or I mean, I guess you could call him a brawler. I would say he's a brawler. With this helps him become a brawler. But not particularly a defensive unit. He kind of needs this, and this definitely helps proc the CT up on his sword, which is another source of CT up for him. And then his other buff, which I think, you know, that 1+ move really helps him with this, because this particular pattern for buddy buffs can be problematic, especially with some of these issues too. It gives him the counter that we talked about before, and 20% pierce and missile resistance to allies. This, again, he has a base 30% missile resistance. So this is going to bring him up to 50% missile resistance and kind of give that to buddies. I'm not going to talk about Assault Blade because it's kind of weird. It decreases defense by 30, and it has a lot of dispel effects if they have defense up, I believe. I think that's how that works. And also healing power down 70, which really reminds me a lot of Resnick the Hoppy, which is another unit that he arguably does remind me a whole lot of. But the thing is, I haven't really seen him use this, and I feel like it's kind of situational if they have that buff up, because I don't, like, with the defense penetration that this guy can get to, he doesn't really care about breaking people's defense. This isn't the highest modifier in his kit, and it's also not the longest range move. So you're not going to see it a ton, but if there's a particularly annoying tank, like this, I think this is probably like Warrior of Light bait, and it's going to deal with those types of tanks really effectively. This would also be a really critical move to land against Snow, I think, or maybe Perrine. She doesn't really have a defense up though, so you couldn't land this on Perrine. This is why this is a weird move. Anyways, moving on to his last 2 skills. One thing I want to point out is these are both increased accuracy moves. The other thing I want to point out is that they are an AoE move and a single target move. So if you're Evasion, you're going to have problems with Bradley, and you're going to have problems with Bradley whether you build for high AoE resistance or if you build for high unit attack resistance, because he's just going to swap between these 2 moves. which is pretty cool. That is kind of another facet of the offensive defensive meta that he has a workaround for, which is pretty awesome. Also, this is his calculated rend is his way of breaking physical barriers, so that's nice. That was another thing, another part of the Swiss Army knife that units like Resnick the Hoppy have for anti-tank that he has here as well. Increased defense penetration by 50 for self. I think that is for this attack. So that's not going to be long lasting, but that is going to ensure that with Führer's Wrath, this is going to be 90% defense penetration when it slaps. And it does quite slap. It gets 4 casts and has a 2-hit chain. Also, big cross pattern. It can be kind of hard to conceptualize some of the off patterns, but think about it like this. While it is a little bit more limited than a diamond AoE pattern, it is only 4 squares shy of it and has pretty good range, all things considered. 200% modifier on both of these skills, and calculated rend specifically is going to be another skill that increases CT by 200. And then we get Helm Splitter. Helm Splitter, high accuracy, removes auto revive, so this is going to be like the lock killer specifically. And 200% mod. It's a fairly simple move compared to calculated rend, but you get 3 casts and it's only 28 AP, and boy, it does work. I'm not going to talk about his main sub job because it's crap. The only thing that I want to mention is that Totalitarian Blade is basically Earth Iridescent Blade. It doesn't have as many hits, but it's kind of what it is. A very skippable sub job, I think. It is worth pointing out that it gives him the ability to apply slow, which is, again, just flavorful, but still probably the worst sub job, and all the other sub jobs have a way of doing similar things as well. I don't think you necessarily run Subterfuge in Operative. It's the only buff that I really think in his whole sub jobs at all that should be really rotated into his buff pattern is Shadow Dance. And even then, only if you cannot make Blink of an Eye work. Or if you just really have the room to get 3 buffs off. Only 2 situations. I think that's really good. Because Disinformation, that feels like a waste. I think I always turn that off, even though, yeah, wholly flavorful. That would work for his general flavor and for the whole theme of creating a tempo advantage. Reaping Edge is Reaping Edge. It's nothing special, but it has 5 casts. Good short range move for later in the game. Drain Zone, really good short range move for later in the game. This is going to hit 8 panels, every panel around him, 3 casts, and it absorbs 30% of the damage done. It is a 126 mod, so that's not huge, but again, it's hitting 8 panels, so if you can get multiple units in there, then you might actually get a decent heal off of this, because he's doing a lot of damage even with small modifiers. And then Shadow Dance reduces damage, all damage, 30%, 3 times. Small Bells effect, and agility up 25% until he is hit. And if he keeps taking people out and CT manipulating, he might not get hit for a while, even though he's not necessarily going to be evasive. Maybe with Subterfuge he becomes a bit evasive. He does have some potential for it, especially if you use that passive that I said was kind of weak. And I'm running him on an evasion team, and I really don't use any of this stuff. I'm fine with him not being an evasion unit. Trick Lancer, I really think you run operative with him. I don't really see an argument for other things. If he didn't have a break physical barrier in Helm Splitter in his main job yet, maybe for barrier break lance. Decrease AP consumption on critical on barrier break lance is pretty cool, because I think he's gonna be landing criticals pretty well, and also that would that would be a really fun combo with Thornlet as well. But really, I don't see a whole lot of reason to run this. Like, there are good skills here, but the thing is, the reason that a unit like this would want piercing moves is for units that have exceptionally high slash attack resistance, and this guy has so much slarp, especially with his LP, which I have talked about previously but haven't shown you. So much slash attack resistance penetration that I don't think he needs piercing moves to like shore up his kit. So here's the LB, Dawn of a New End, increased slash attack resistance penetration 40. So with his sword, with his Fure's Wrath passive, this is going to get you to 100% slash attack resistance penetration for 3 turns. And 200 mod, so equivalent mod to Helm Splitter and Calculated Rend. And like so many of his other skills, it is going to increase your CT by 200. It's also a 3-hit skill. And one of the things I like about chaining for critical units is that it gives them increased chances of landing the extra abilities from stuff like Thornlet. So he has 3 chances to land a critical hit with this move and get the agility down on them. And it's really impactful if they get hit with agility down and he gets CT up. And that happens so often with this kit. It's another reason I really like the Thornlet on Eliza, because she can do the same thing with Warning Volley. But like, that just synergizes really well with his entire kit. So with all of that being said, let's move into some footage of him doing what he do. In retrospect, it feels like a good idea to wait just a little while to do the showcase video. Even though I do have him at 140, just test him out for a while, see how long I can stay towards the top of arena and how well I fare there. And also, this video is blessedly under 30 minutes, despite the immense amount of things that I had to say, because I guess I'll have to get into a lot of the building and theory crafting in the playtesting and showcase video. But wow, I guess there's nothing left to say, but see you in the next one. And I guess good luck with your pulls. Good grief. Limited collaboration units. I had to go completely to pity.